Okay, so when I was asked to put this together, the questions that were asked basically was, what's the difference between the two? We have an IA model and we have an EA model, and lots of times things get lost in translation. Even within IA, we all know that the term inclusive access can be called multiple things. We have different names, direct access, first day access, whatever you may call it on your campus. But ultimately, they are digitally delivery methods. So it's a way for you to deliver content to students via the LMS in 90, probably 5% of the cases. I mean, there are some that can work external of that, but for the most part, via the LMS, and that have some sort of charging mechanism, whether that be an opt-in model or an opt-out model. So let's kind of look at them individually for a second. Starting with inclusive access, the really big differences is that it's built at the class level. So you have a single ISBN, or depending on if you have multiple content in that course, multiple ISBNs that have been provided by the publisher to you and to your faculty so that we know what the pricing is going to be for each of those individual items. So those prices can fluctuate depending on what's being used. It can even fluctuate depending on what publisher you're using. So you could have two items from Pearson that are two different prices. You could have, a single item from McGraw and then another item from Norton, again, different pricing. And so those charges are billed to the student at those individual prices. Only the instructors who are willing to participate or open to participating usually are part of the inclusive access program. So there's a lot less pushback because those folks who are utilizing the content are the ones that are wanting to push in this direction. And, the main reason a lot of us have moved in these directions are two pieces. One, there's an access issue. There are students out there that do not have their content. They go to school with let's say a liability, but ultimately that's kind of what it is. They're coming to class and they're not ready. So what do we do and what can we do to help that? So there's an access. Then the other piece of that is the affordability side. And, one of the mandates, for lack of a better term, that we have, the federal regulations, is that inclusive access models have to offer content below market price. And so as we go through that, that's kind of the affordability side. We're lowering the price of the content for the students. And again, it's usually those faculty who are aware of those things and are trying to have those things happen within their own course that kind of jump on board here. So it's kind of a nice thing because you don't have to worry about any maybe pushback from faculty who are not interested in moving in this direction. In an inclusive access model, the billing to the student happens after the term has started. We provide some sort of period, we call it an opt-out period. You may call it something different, but ultimately you have a period of time in which the students can utilize the content. During that time, they can do their opt-out. And once that happens, we have our census date, and those students who have decided not to participate in the program are basically turned off. And then they can go and they purchase that content, whatever it may be, directly from their publishers if that's what they choose to do. So that's kind of the inclusive access side. Now, how does that differ from the equitable access side? Well, in the equitable access side, it is everything is included for a single price. Now, whether that price is built as a flat rate for all students or whether that's built at a per credit hour rate, that is all dependent on the institution. We at UC Davis have a flat rate for all students. It is $169, down from $199 from last year. And ultimately, the reason we have gone that rate is a couple of reasons. One, we have very, very, very few part-time students. A majority of our students are full-time students. That's one thing. The second thing is every other thing that's on campus is that way. There is not a prorated rate for any other charges or fees the campus has, whether you are a full-time student or a part-time student. So from that perspective, it just made sense to keep it the same as everything else on campus. All materials for all instructors are included. So unlike IA, where it's just those faculty have said, hey, I have this courseware, I would like to have it in inclusive access, or that you maybe have said, hey, Professor so-and-so, you have this courseware, we'd like to move you into inclusive access, and then you explain the reasons why. This is just everything for everyone. Now, in the Davis model, it is a digital first model, meaning that if the content has a digital option, that is what we will provide. If it doesn't, we will still provide the print option, and it is included within the 169. So it's not like they have to pay extra for those print books. They do need to come into the store to pick them up, but it is included within that price. So, you may have some more pushback or some concerns from faculty saying, well, I don't want to have a digital book. I would rather have a print book. There are some other institutions that are looking at that. What we have come to realize is a couple of things. Price, again, we're talking about affordability. That's one of the main factors of all this. If we include print books, the price goes up. It just does. It costs more for the program. It costs more for the publishers, then ultimately ends up costing more for the student. So there's one piece. Second piece is all the logistical issues that we come across when it comes to delivering this type of program. I would say 90% of them all revolve around a print book. And so the less amount of those that we have, the more streamlined of a program we have that we can deliver, which again, billing of the tuition. So this is a little bit different, where IA you bill after the term is started, EA you bill before the term begins. Even though you still may have the same opt-out timeline, the billing happens ahead of time. And the reason for that is it allows for financial aid. And so what happens is your bill is attached to your tuition. In our case, it's a separate line item. So as they look down their tuition bill, they see everything that they have, equitable access is a line item there. And if they choose to opt out, that is where they can start that process. But ultimately what happens is once the student has passed the term date where they have to actually pay their tuition, that is when their equitable access charge is due. And so if they have financial aid that's going to cover those costs, then it automatically happens. In an inclusive access model, since it happens after the fact, the students have already paid their tuition, they've already gotten their reimbursement check, and now what we're hoping for is the student is going to save that money that they were supposed to spend on course materials. However, we all know when given that point, students have to look at that and say, okay, I have this money in my pocket. I have to pay for rent, I have to pay for food, I have to pay for other things, gas for my car, whatever it may be. Even though those funds were earmarked for course materials will be the first thing that a student goes without. So that allows that access for the students to actually have all of their content.